The clock is ticking. Taxes are due. Most Americans now pay someone else to do them because the rules are so complex.
I have an accountant.
It's something you never want to do yourself.
I have absolutely no idea what's in them, and I'm signing my, promising that this is all true.
This is Bob. He does my taxes. I don't want to pay Bob, but I have to because I don't understand the rules. I bet you don't know the rules either. Tonight, our game, Real or Fake, will test you.
One state offers a $50 tax credit for losing both arms. Is that real or fake?
That we're not sure shows how crazy it is that the IRS spends your money to make this film that says without the IRS, Earth would be in chaos.
There's money laundering, bribery, cash pay haircuts and manicures.
And some people want higher taxes. But we're already taxed to death. That's our show tonight.
And now, John Stossel.
Oliver Wendell Holmes, the former Supreme Court justice, once said, "Taxes are what we pay for a civilized society." Liberals like citing that, but Holmes said that in 1927, when taxes were just 10% of GDP. That's enough to pay for a civilized society. But America's government's grown so fast, that it's now spending 40% of GDP. I think it's now much too big, but I do want to pay my fair share, so what's that? What is fair? I now give most of my income to the government. Poor people pay a smaller percentage, and lots of people say that's fair. I see their point. But Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert says it's not fair, and America needs a flat tax, meaning, Congressman, what?
Well, it means that when people hear the word fair share, or the fair, it ought to be flat tax. The only way to truly make things fair, so that if you're making more, you pay more, you make less, you pay less, make it a flat tax. The word fair ought to bring to mind a flat tax. And the president has talked repeatedly about Warren Buffett's unfairness in not paying as high a rate as his secretary. Well, fix it. Make the capital gains 15. Make the income tax 15. We can work out a number, but make it flat to make it fair. You hear people say, well, I want it fair, and they really do, but they cannot tell you what a fair share is. You give them the numbers about the top 1% making 13% of the money and paying 39% of the taxes, their eyes gloss over. But if you say, well, would it be fair if everybody paid the same rate across the board? They go, yeah, that sounds fair. I think Americans are ready for it.
I am skeptical. I think most Americans would say Warren Buffett has billions of dollars. He should pay more than I do.
That's absolutely right. He should pay more than
But he should pay a higher
should.
percentage, I mean.
Well, that would be a progressive, and that begins to play into people's jealousy. And I don't want to go after millionaires more than anyone else. Make them pay their fair share. That's a flat tax. And I don't think people would mind if you saw that they would not have all the deductions, all the wiggle room. They would be in the same exact position as everyone else.
And so when you talk about having this flat tax, you also talk about getting rid of deductions. You would just keep charity and mortgage interest deduction. Everything else gone.
Everything else gone. Everything gone. And, if you were going to design a system that would really allow maximum corruption, maximum lobbying efforts, maximum fundraising in Washington, you'd create a system just like we have, where it's so complex. We've gotten to this point now. We've got to fix it. It can't keep going like this.
But the complication comes in all the stupid deductions and exceptions. The complication, a graduated progressive tax rate is not that complicated.
Well, but the way that the wealthy have not been fighting so hard against the progressive rate is they've got all the loopholes. I think the wealthiest would quit fighting so hard if they were on the same level playing field with everyone else, and I think people would accept that. But our leadership so far has not been willing to push it, and I think it's a no-brainer. We ought to be pushing it.
Thank you, Congressman Gohmert.
Well, thanks Steve Forbes and Art Laffer and all those who've been pushing before me.
We'll hear from Art Laffer shortly on the show.
Good.
Now, what I hate even more than just the high taxes is the complication. I resent that I have to pay him for the hours he spends doing my tax forms, just mine. But I have to pay him because there's no way I can do mine on my own. The federal tax code is now 70,000 pages long. 70,000 pages, and this is just what the feds do. State and local adds more. All these rules have some purpose to penalize some behavior and encourage another, but the result is insanity. Insanity that helps the politically connected, people in the know, people like me. Dumb tax rules once gave me a free golf cart. I got it thanks to Congressman Charlie Rangel's conceit that a tax credit for electric cars was a good thing.
Encouraging energy-efficient products such as plug-in hybrid cars.
His tax credit led dealers like this one to advertise free carts. Buy one for $6,000, get a $6,000 tax credit. So I got this one, totally free.
Free for me anyway. You taxpayers paid for it. Yes, you did, and I gave it away. And that credit, thankfully, no longer exists. But it's things like that that keep the tax code complicated. And this is just the income tax. There are all sorts of sneaky taxes that most of you may not even know about.
You and I pay them all day long, from the moment I wake up and turn on a light. I pay more when I brush my teeth and license my dog. My building pays property and fuel taxes and adds it to my monthly bill. And when I leave home to take the subway to work, I pay the Metropolitan Commuter Transportation Mobility Tax. At work, I make some phone calls.
Yes, absolutely.
Or get a bite to eat or a soda to drink.
I'd like a smoked turkey in this.
When I gas up my car, as much as a quarter of the price of gas is federal, state, and city excise taxes. Heck, people pay sales taxes all day long.
So many taxes. I need a drink.
I'm lucky I don't smoke.
This is one reason why American economic growth has stalled, says Scott Hodge. He's president of the Tax Foundation. Now, when I think of these rules strangling growth, I think of the safety regulations and the constant environmental the spider web, not the tax code. We've done okay with our tax code.
The tax code is a mess, and it's because of these 70,000 pages that dictate virtually every aspect of our lives and cost Americans about 6 billion hours worth of our time just to comply with. And that's the reason about 6 out of 10 of us pay someone else to do our taxes, because it's not only so complicated, we're afraid of making a mistake and getting audited. So it's created fear in Americans as well as complexity.
And you're saying that those 6 out of 10 of us could have used that money and time more creatively, might have boosted the economy, doing something useful.
Oh, it's what we call deadweight loss. It costs the economy about $200 billion a year just to comply with this 70,000 pages of tax regulations. That's part of the reason why the economy is growing so slowly.
So, these are all popular. These are steering people to good things. Solar panels on the roof of your house. You get a credit if you adopt a child. The Congress passes these things because people say, that's fair.
Oh, they all sound great by themselves, but when you put them all together, it's what creates this complicated mess and dictates every aspect of our lives. It's made the IRS a super agency involved in everything from where we put our kids in daycare to whether we buy a hybrid vehicle. That's nuts. And
but why is it nuts? If you want people to put their kids in daycare to help those people who need that help, or to buy hybrid vehicles, how else are you going to steer them there?
Well, it steers the economy in the wrong direction in many cases, and that's one of the reasons why the economy is growing so slowly, because we're dictating our lives to the tax system, not to what's economically efficient or profitable. That's what drives the economy, and that's what other countries have done by streamlining their tax system.
Countries like?
Like Hong Kong would be a good example. There are about 15 countries across the globe that have moved toward a flat tax. Hong Kong has a low rate, broad base, no capital gains, no death tax, no other sorts of taxes that create all of this economic inefficiencies.
And to be clear, Hong Kong doesn't have a flat tax, but it has a simple tax.
A simple tax.
Russia, Estonia, a bunch of countries have 15 or 20% flat taxes.
Exactly.
And Hong Kong went from poor to rich in just a few years. They grew out of poverty because of simple rules.
Simple rules, which has made that country really one of the most business-friendly, economically efficient countries in the globe.
And the tax foundation says we should have no deductions?
Well, we should have few deductions. There are things that make sense, like having a deduction for savings. We shouldn't be taxing savings, capital gains, things like that. But let's get rid of most of the other politically directed...
Charity?
Listen, the tax foundation is a charity under the tax code. I'd be willing to give that up for a flatter tax.
Okay, a man willing to give up money for a flatter tax. Thank you, Scott Hodge. Coming up, did you know that the IRS used your tax dollars to produce a Star Trek parody?
The no taxions' lack of skilled tax leaders has resulted in a widespread case of confusion.
Your money at work. But next, the secret taxes in Obamacare, and also people who profit from our complex tax code.
The Affordable Care Act means big changes this year when you file your taxes. I read the whole 900 pages.
I understand that I have to pay taxes, but I resent the sneaky taxes, the hidden fees on my phone bill and electric bill. And now we're about to be hit by new sneaky taxes as part of Obamacare. Maybe you thought Obamacare is funded by shifting money from rich drug companies and insurers. Dream on. You will pay more, though there hasn't been much publicity about that, says John Merline. He writes about taxes for Investors Business Daily. So what's hidden in Obamacare?
Well, there are 21 at least tax hikes in Obamacare, separate tax hikes. Most of them you won't see. They're hidden in various ways. Let's say, for example, that you have a flexible spending account, which millions of Americans do. Tax-free money that you can spend on health care.
Also called a health savings account or medical savings account.
Obamacare limits it to $2,500. So what that means is anybody who had been putting, say, $5,000 into a flexible spending account is going to pay more taxes next year. They won't know why. They'll just suddenly realize they have a smaller deduction. Their tax bill goes up.
What else?
Well, you also have limits on what you can use your flexible spending account on. Obamacare says that you can't spend it on over-the-counter drugs, which you used to be able to. Now, the limit on how much you can put into a flexible spending account raises $24 billion over 10 years. The limit on what you can use it for raises another $4 billion. So it's not peanuts here. You're talking about real money.
The biggest money, $317 billion, payroll and investment tax?
That's supposedly the tax hike on the wealthy that you mentioned. What it says is that if you make over $250,000, your Medicare tax, you pay a premium on that of 0.9%. So it goes up by almost 1%. And then there's a tax on investment income of 3.8%.
Obamacare includes something called a high medical bill tax?
Right now, you can deduct medical expenses if they're over 7.5% of your income. What Obamacare does is raise that threshold to 10%. So if you're sick and you have high medical bills, next year you won't be able to deduct nearly as much money as you did.
Plus $160 billion, the mandate penalties. That's the company that says, I'm not going to insure my people, I'll just pay the penalty.
There are individuals...
It's a penalty, it's not a tax. I guess it's the same thing.
Supreme Court says it's tax. The penalty tax on individuals, they figure, will raise about $50 billion over 10 years. And then you have penalties paid by businesses who don't buy insurance. Remember, you have to buy insurance or you pay the penalty.
Now, we've just covered 4 or 5 of the 20-some taxes. It's so complex. H&R Block recently made a commercial just to capitalize on the complications of Obamacare.
The Affordable Care Act means big changes this year when you file your taxes. I read the whole 900 pages. I will give you a tax and health care review. I know the law, I have the solution, and I can help you figure it out. We're going to see this through...
She's smiling about it, this big, grin. We invited H&R Block on the show to talk about the gloating in this ad, but they didn't respond. I guess they're happy because complexity means more of us have to go pay them.
This turbocharges tax complexity. That's why she's smiling. You have to figure out how much subsidy you're due. You have to figure out if you don't buy insurance, how much of a penalty you pay. That's really complicated. If you have an insurance gap of 3 months or less, you don't pay the penalty. But if it's 3 months or more, you pay the penalty. If you're in one of these exempt categories, you don't have to buy insurance or pay a penalty. It's inordinately complicated. It's so complicated, in fact, that the application form is 21 pages long, because they need to know how much income you're making and so forth.
I hate it. I hate all these complications. Already, most Americans now have to go to someone. They can't do their tax. They don't do their taxes on their own. They go get help now with Obamacare. More will have to.
Exactly right.
Thank you, John. Merline from Investors Business Daily, a great newspaper. Coming up, a new version of Star Trek, paid for by the IRS, in other words, by you. And you won't believe what they do with your money.
We received a distress call from the Planet No Tax in the ATAT system. According to their leaders, the planet civilization has degraded to anarchy. Chaos rules over order.